By almost any standard, William H. Johnson can be considered a major American artist. He produced hundreds of works in his eclectic career that spanned several decades as well as several continents. It was not until very recently, however, that his work began to receive the attention it deserves. Born in South Carolina to a poor African American family, Johnson moved to New York at the age of 17. Working a variety of jobs, he saved up enough money to pay for an art education at the prestigious National Academy of Design. His mastery of the Academy's rigorous standards gained him both numerous awards and the respect of his teachers and fellow students. Johnson spent the late 1920s in France, absorbing the lessons of modernism. As a result, his work became more expressive and emotional. During the same period, he met and fell in love with Danish artist Holka Craik, whom he married in 1930. The couple spent most of the 30s in Scandinavia, where Johnson's interest in primitivism and folk art began to have a noticeable impact on his work. Returning with his wife to the United States in 1938, Johnson immersed himself in the traditions of Afro-America, producing work characterized by its stunning folk art simplicity. A New York City resident, he became a familiar figure on the city's art scene. He was also a well-established part of the African American artistic community at the time of when most black artists were still riding the crest of the Harlem Renaissance. Although Johnson enjoyed a certain degree of success as an artist in this country and abroad, he could not find financial security. Following his wife's death in 1944, Johnson's physical and mental health declined dramatically. In a tragic and drawn-out conclusion to a life of immense creativity, Johnson spent his last 23 years in a state hospital in Long Island. By the time of his death in 1970, he had slipped into obscurity. After his death, his entire life's work was almost disposed of to save storage costs, but it was rescued by his friends at the last moment. Over 1,000 paintings by Johnson are now part of the collection of the Smithsonian Institution's Smithsonian American Art Museum. In this painting, Johnson depicts the rough lives of a chain gang he remembered from his youth growing up in South Carolina. The painting symbolizes the brutal work the chain gangs were put through. In this painting, Johnson commemorates the riots of 1943, which started from a confrontation between a white police officer, a black woman, and a black soldier, which then resulted in fighting and burning of buildings that left several killed and hundreds wounded. Johnson painted the police officers as black men, and the ground covered with empty liquor bottles. He did this to suggest that the people of Harlem were hurting themselves through their own behavior. In this painting, Johnson depicts the segregation within the United States military. Johnson pokes fun at the strict regiment and discipline within the Army. He approached the subject of segregation within the Army with a touch of humor. In this painting, Johnson depicts the common street dancers and performers of Harlem. He showed the dance craze that had swept Harlem and had eventually led to the swing culture that covered the country just before the Second World War. Johnson showed how one could simply walk down the street to see dancing or music. There was no need to attend a concert if you lived in Harlem. In this painting, Johnson shows Abraham Lincoln with Frederick Douglass standing next to blacks being hanged. This is meant to depict the unfair treatment of blacks, even though Lincoln had one day wished for complete equality of African Americans. Johnson's use of the African American community of both Harlem and South Carolina, as well as a very conscious folk style of painting, helps to show how the concept was linked to the tradition and change in Harlem. By casting an urban scene within a rural style of painting, Johnson speaks to the sense of the new urban African American community that was formed during the Harlem Renaissance. Through this, Johnson can truly be remembered as a classic American artist.